It begins in silence, quiet enough that no one around you realizes what's happening. You're 7 years old, looking into the eyes of a parent who is unraveling right in front of you. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's rage. Maybe it's the heavy, echoing emptiness of someone too wounded to be present. And without anyone telling you, something ancient and instinctive clicks inside your small mind. If I don't hold everything together, everything will fall apart. That's the moment a child vanishes, not in body, but in spirit. They smile more to keep the peace. They cry less to avoid being a problem. They learn to read the atmosphere before daring to speak. They turn into the emotional thermostat of the household. They grow into miniature adults long before their brain is ready for the weight of responsibility they're carrying. And the world applauds them for it. You're so mature. You're so reliable. You're so strong. But no one ever pauses to ask, at what cost? That is the hidden grief carried by the children who grow up too quickly. And today we're going deep into the psychology of that child, because those early patterns don't disappear with time. They shape you. They shadow your relationships, your work, your sense of worth. And if you don't understand what happened, you'll live your adult life reenacting the same survival strategies that once protected you, but now quietly suffocate you. Let's begin with what's actually going on developmentally. When a child is placed in the position of emotionally supporting an adult, rather than being supported by them, psychologists call it parentification. It's when the child becomes the caretaker, the mediator, the emotional anchor, the silent therapist, the protector. And this isn't just unhealthy, it literally reshapes the developing brain. When a child is constantly responsible for managing their own emotions or the volatile emotions of a parent, the result is hypervigilance. You become someone who is always scanning for threats. You walk on eggshells. You learn that love is conditional, a kind of transaction in which you must earn safety by providing calm or caretaking. You learn that your own needs are dangerous because they might trigger conflict, but everyone else's needs are urgent. So you begin to disappear, not physically, but inwardly. And in your place grows a version of you that performs well. The good kid, the quiet achiever, the friend who listens to everyone's pain but never shares their own. The person who never asks for help, who never wants to be a burden. And you become so skilled at wearing this identity that even you forget it's a mask. Yet deep underneath it all, something hurts. Something aches for attention, for protection. Because the child you buried inside yourself didn't die. They're still there, screaming without sound, asking, why didn't someone protect me? As you get older, the symptoms become more layered, more subtle, more confusing. You may become fiercely independent, rejecting help even when you're drowning. You might push people away because intimacy feels unsafe. You may not feel joy fully because happiness seems unfamiliar, unearned, even dangerous. You might have trouble resting because productivity is the only way you've ever known to feel valuable. And perhaps the most painful part, you may not even realize you're still living in survival mode. When chaos becomes the norm early in life, your nervous system starts to treat instability as home. Stillness feels unnerving, peace feels suspicious, love feels like something you'll eventually have to repay. This is the inner world of a child forced into premature adulthood. It's not just sadness, it's deep, complex trauma that influences how you see everything, including yourself. And you might wonder, why would any child choose that role? But the truth is, they don't choose. This isn't conscious, it's biological. Children depend on caregivers for survival, and in the absence of safety, they sacrifice authenticity for attachment. That's not weakness, it's an act of pure instinct, pure intelligence. But here's the tragedy. What once saved you is now the very thing limiting you. Many of us are wandering through adulthood as high-functioning individuals with deeply wounded inner children pulling the strings. We overwork to prove we're good enough. We stay silent to avoid being abandoned. We take care of everyone else while secretly hoping someone will finally take care of us. And that hidden fantasy that someone will finally realize we're not as strong as we pretend to be, that someone will let us collapse into their arms. That fantasy belongs not to your adult self, but to the child who never got to be held. The first step toward healing isn't fixing, it's witnessing. Because until you acknowledge what truly happened, you'll keep invalidating yourself with thoughts like, it wasn't that bad. Other people had it worse. I turned out fine. But fine is just another mask. And deep down, you know that. So what becomes of that prematurely grown child once they reach adulthood? They become adults who can't relax even in peaceful environments. Adults who struggle to trust gentleness. Adults who give endlessly but cannot receive love without guilt. Adults who apologize when they cry, who shrink under compliments, who confuse chronic exhaustion with being accomplished. This is the price of growing up too fast. Because if your childhood taught you to be strong instead of soft, obedient instead of honest, self-sacrificing instead of self-aware, what kind of adulthood follows? You inherit a life lived on the edge of breath, always waiting for permission to fall apart. But here is the truth no one ever told you. No one is coming to rescue the child you hid away. That responsibility belongs to you now. You are the one who must return to them. You are the one who must say the words they never heard. You didn't deserve that. You were just a child. You don't have to carry this anymore. That's where shadow work begins. Not with performing, not with pretending to be okay, not with drowning the pain in toxic positivity, but by turning toward the abandoned parts of yourself and saying, I see you, I hear you, I'm staying. That is the first step of repair, and it's painful. It asks you to feel the grief you never had the chance to feel, to sit with the anger, the sorrow, the unmet needs, to mourn the birthdays where no one showed up, to grieve the innocence you lost while protecting people who should have protected you. But that grief is not weakness. It's evidence that the frozen parts of you are finally thawing. And now let's talk about how those childhood survival patterns show up in adulthood, quietly, tragically, and almost invisibly. Maybe you're the therapist in every friend group, but no one really knows you. Maybe people admire your independence, not realizing it comes from fear of being a burden. Maybe your relationships follow the same exhausting pattern. You overfunction, overexplain, overcompensate, and end up feeling unseen. Maybe you struggle with boundaries because saying no still feels dangerous, like a betrayal of the role you were trained to play. These are not your personality. They are adaptations, learned, conditioned, and yes, unlearnable. But only when you stop worshiping your strength and begin honoring your wounds. One of the most powerful steps is to ask your inner child, what did I need back then that I never received? You might hear answers like, I needed someone to tell me it wasn't my fault. I needed someone to ask how I felt. I needed room to play. I needed rest. I needed to be a kid. And slowly, very slowly, you begin giving those things to yourself. Not to erase the past, but to stop repeating it. This is how you stop seeking parents in your partners. How you stop mistaking anxiety for intuition. How you stop running from the child you once were and start stepping into the adult you're becoming. Jung said there is no awakening without pain, and that people will do anything to avoid confronting their own soul. But shadow work requires facing every part of yourself, the ashamed, the frightened, the furious, the forgotten. Healing isn't about becoming a new person. It's about remembering who you were before the world demanded you shapeshift. So if you grew up too fast, hear this. Your maturity was never the issue. The issue was that you weren't given a choice. But now you have one. You can choose tenderness. You can choose rest. You can choose to stop carrying everyone else's emotions and start acknowledging your own. It won't be instant. There will be days when you feel like a child again. Good. That means you're finally letting them come home. Let them cry. Let them laugh. Let them be held. Because you're not broken. You're becoming whole. And maybe for the first time, you're growing up in the right direction. Not through fear, not through pressure, but through truth. You didn't get the childhood you deserved, but you still have a future. And this time, you get to create it.